With 2017 coming to an end, German smashers are wondering what the next German melee power ranking will look like. The ranking is usually updated every 6 months, here's the one from July for example, and the newest one, which covers the tournaments from July to December, should be released in early 2018. As a part of the German melee bike room, I also have the job of being a panelist for this upcoming PR. I took a lot of time collecting results and comparing players on my stream, big thanks to Fatman, Dart, Blaze, Kellner and Solari for helping me there. And now I'll show you how I ended up placing all these players. Just like the last list, there will be 20 players on here. But first, I'll go over all the inactive players, or the honorable mentions, and the runner-ups before counting down my list from 20 to 1. To make it clear, this is my opinion. This is not an official list or anything. This is just how I would currently place these players on my list. If you disagree with me, then that's completely fine, and I encourage you to discuss this with me in the comments. But please don't take anything I say about your play skill as a personal insult. Unfortunately, we've got quite a few honorable mentions, or players who would definitely be good enough to be on this list, but simply didn't go to enough tournaments. One of these players is Six, the best Link in Europe and maybe even the best Link in the world. His only singles tournament was Air 4, where he beat Homemade Waffles and Charlon for a finish in 9th place. 9th place at Air is straight up ridiculous. And if Six had attended more, he would definitely be at least in the top 5 of German players. Fax is another player, who would definitely be good enough to be in the top 10, but only went to Air 4, where he achieved a solid 33rd place. Prince, even if he's inactive, is still the best German puff and capable of beating almost everyone in the top 20. We also have a new top player in our country, Dart, and yes, that is the Dart, the US Marth player, who is famous for beating the likes of Wizrope and Druckfox. Dart attended 2 German tournaments, a smaller one and a bigger one, with the bigger one being Pixel Pokal. He didn't lose any sets at either of the tournaments, and beat Kellner before double eliminating Reaper to win Pixel Pokal from winners. This guy is a god, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him go from an honorable mention to a rank 1 to rank 3 player on the next list. I also want to mention John Ass, since everyone keeps telling me how amazing he is, but he's been inactive for so long now that I personally have never seen him play at a tournament, and I've been playing for a little more than 2 years now. Meatzors, who is in my opinion the second best Falco in Germany, would be in my top 20, but he won't be on this list since he didn't go to enough tournaments. The last person I want to mention is Squiltendorf, one of the hit bosses from Berlin. He'd also be in my top 15, but he hasn't left Berlin for a tournament in so long, so it's way too hard to rank him accurately. Okay, so let's start by talking about the top 20, or rather the players just outside of it. Here are a few players who ended up ranking just outside of the list. These players are not in any order, since ordering the players below number 20 would be pointless anyways. Stevo, Levi and Wonder are all good enough to be on the PR, but they either kind of dropped the ball in the last few months, or didn't show off their skill at enough tournaments. Wonder was ranked 13th half a year ago, but since then his only relevant wins were his sets over Yogui and Slim Shady at Awakening 3. His 13th place at that tournament is definitely quite good, but his losses to Silver Bullet, Fortilt and J3LY really drag him down. If you're only going to go to 3 tournaments, you can't have losses like that and still expect to make it into the top 20. Stevo also has a really good win over Slim Shady, and he might be the best or second best German Falco in free play, but he hasn't been able to show his true skill in tournament this year. He DQ'd himself at one of the 3 tournaments he attended, so there's just not enough data to justify putting him above some of the players who put themselves out there more often. Levi is a really special case. He has shown signs of absolute brilliance, like when he 4-stocked over Triforce, as you can see him doing right now, but at one of the 3 tournaments he attended he lost to Fortilt, and the only relevant player he beat is Frozen Light, so he's not making it into the top 20 this time. The potential is definitely there though, he just needs the results to show it. The previously mentioned Fortilt is another barely not top 20 player. He's beaten Bobby, Fex, Wonder and Levi, which is good for him, good job man, but losing to Storky, Idra, Plincy, Drone and Razim and a few others isn't great at all, so we won't be on the PR for at least another 6 months. Now that we finally got that out of the way, we can start talking about the top 20. I ordered the players into a total of 7 tiers to be able to show skill gaps between players more accurately. 7 tiers for 20 people may seem like a lot, but I think all of it makes sense. The tiers don't mean that much, I mostly use them to give this video some structure, so please don't get mad if you disagree with a player being in a certain tier. In tier 7 there's Dragon in 20th place and PHL or Phil in 19th place. Dragon, one of the 4 Moth players in this top 20, has done a decent job at most of the Smash 4 tournaments he's attended, beating Vision, Parsec twice and most importantly getting a set win over Rix. He's also 3-1 in sets against Phil, and while Phil has suffered some relatively bad losses to Self-Reflection and Parsec, his 3-3 record against Luma, 3 wins against Mawakate, and most importantly, his sets over Yomi and Uzleon are what made me put him above Dragon. My reason for not putting Phil higher is that he has comparatively bad set records against all the players above him. He's lost a lot of sets to the next 3 to 4 players I'm going to talk about. Overall, these two players are capable of maybe beating a player in the 11 to 20 range, but you won't see them getting a top 8 finish at a German national. The next and 6th tier consists of 3 players, with those 3 players being the number 18 Fex, the number 17 Luma, and the number 16 Mawakate. Fex is a weird case, as he's somewhat of a one-hit wonder. His 4th place at PPM Melee number 2 is probably the best performance of players in the 14 to 20 range. After losing to Uzleon in winners round 1, he plowed his way through losers bracket, beating Imperfect, Konati, Karon, and PHL before falling to Däumling in losers semis. His performances at Syndicate, Awakening 3 and Dash Dancer's Dawn still left a lot to be desired with a few questionable losses, but I'm sure that he's on a good path to an even higher placing next season. Luma, who has been playing Melee literally forever now, is still able to compete with the very top dogs in this country. He's beaten Phil 3 times, Dragon 3 times, and especially his 2 wins against Blaze had me shocked, since I didn't even hear of his good wins right when they happened. I think he reminded everyone that even though he's as old school as it gets, his playstyle is everything but outdated. Mawakate, who is ranked 16th on my list, has one set win over Blaze, Frozen Light and Baron Brody, with his worst loss being Parsec. He mostly attended the Smash 4 tournament series, which is why I again didn't even see how good his season has been, but I think he's done well enough to deserve this placing. It's hard to judge how well he might do in the future, as we've only seen him play against roughly the same players. It would be really cool to see him go to a Berlin or a Hanover tournament, for example. Players in tier 6 can be top 10 players on rare occasions, but I don't see them doing that regularly yet, though it's definitely something that might happen in the future. The gap between tier 6 and the upcoming tier 5 is fairly big. In this tier we have players who are definitely capable of making top 8 at a German national, but they haven't shown the potential that recently. Just like last season, 15th place goes to Rix. His win against Charlon, a 2-1 set record versus Frozen Light, and a 2-2 set counts against Blaze made me put him here, but he seems to be struggling with some matchups, as his losses to Parsec, Tim Money and Dragon make me believe that he's not as far as the players above him yet. I hope his Fox can keep improving, since I love the way he plays, and I think that he understands the game extremely well. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you that ranking Frozen Light and Miriam accurately was rough. While I do know that Miriam, my teammate, is capable of beating many of Germany's and Europe's high-level players, he hasn't really shown that in this season. His biggest achievements are his 5-3 set record against fatman.spam, a win against Slim Shady, whom he is 1-1 against, and a win against Käse. This is about as good as it got for him in the last 6 months. Frozen Light, on the other hand, has shown better peaks while only having slightly worse losses. The tournaments that made me decide to rank Frozen Light above Miriam are Hanover Underground Monthly, where Frozen Light beat Miriam and placed 4th compared to Miriam's 9th, and Air 4. To be fair, Miriam didn't go to Air 4, but Frozen Light managed to make it to 25th place at Air by beating Captain Nebula, Bobby, Paju, and most importantly by beating Chillin' Dude. His losses to Trunks and Stormred are straight up bad, like, no offense to those players, but that's really not great, but his peaks make up for it. Miriam played a really close set against Mahi at Syndicate, which lost 3-2. Had he won that set, I might have put him above Frozen Light, but he didn't, so he'll have to settle with 14th place. I know that these two players are extremely good, but they'll have to show it by beating more of the players ranked above them, if they want to move up the list even more. Now we're getting to the 12 best active Melee players in Germany. This is where it got really hard. This tier, tier 4, fittingly also consists of 4 players. Cookie and fatman.spam, Käse and Konati. Here is how I had placed them before looking at any of the results. I knew that it would be hard to justify putting Cookie above everyone, and when I saw everyone's wins and losses, I was reminded that he only went to 3 tournaments and has lost to Frozen Light and Yomi. Käse, on the other hand, is a powerhouse of consistency, with solid wins under his belt. His worst loss is to Supercat Meow, and that isn't even that bad. His wins against international players are worth a lot in my book. Fatman obviously has the best wins, beating both Timmy and Sigero, but also by far the worst losses, dropping 2 sets to Slux, a Puff player from Hanover, and losing to Weege, a Ganondorf player who isn't anywhere close to even being in the top 30. But that's just how ICES works sometimes. You can beat amazing players who aren't as great at the matchup, but you might lose to a worse player who will camp you out, or a worse player who is simply very good at the matchup. Konati had a fairly quiet season until he had a good performance at Air 4, where he beat Kellner in his Diamond Pool. He also collected a win over Caron at one of the various PPA Melee Berlin tournaments he attended. The reason why I consider ranking him highest of all the players in this tier is due to his amazing run at Big PPM, where he beat Caron, Schlimmshady, Uzleon, Fatman and Caron again to make it into second place only behind Swedish Delight. This is the best run of any player in this tier, and with his worst losses being Fax, Raoul and Charlon, the Charlon with an L, putting him in 9th place would be a reasonable decision. However, I feel like Fatman is more likely to get a really good run at an EU major than Konadi is. This decision is a really hard one to make, and it only depends on what you value more, consistency or peaks. If I could, I would put both of them in 9th place, but since I have to make a choice, Konadi will be 9th and Fatman 10th. My reason for that is that Konadi is more likely to beat the players who are ranked directly above him, and those are the players you'll run into the most. Now we've got Kukin and Kesa left. My brain is telling me that Kukin is the best player here, as he has beaten Kellner, Nikki and Blaze and is 1-1 with Fatman and 1-0 over Kesa. I think that Kukin would on average place better than Kesa at big tournaments. At all 3 events Kukin attended, Kesa didn't achieve a higher placing than Kukin did. In the end though, it's hard to judge how well rounded he is, but I do have faith in his skill and I'll give him the spot above Kesa. While Kesa is the most consistent player, his losses to Fatman, Maelram and Frozenlight without any wins against them made me decide to give him last place in this tier. His international wins are sick though, and he's really earned himself the title of being the Sheik Ditto Master. Now that we're done with this tier, in which the players are way too close, we'll get to the next tier, where the next 6 players are just as close in skill. This is not the ranking yet, I'm just showing you who those players are right now. To rank these guys accurately, I had to create a table with their head-to-head matchups, and another table in which I directly compare the placings at the tournaments at least 3 of them attended. The head-to-head matchup shows that especially Däumling hasn't had it too easy in this ranking period. He's 1-3 against Blaze, which isn't awful because winning a single set against Blaze as ICs is a huge achievement, but then he's also 0-2 versus Kellner and 0-4 versus Nikki. He was 2-0 against Schlimmshady before Schlimm won their most recent set at Pixel Pokal in late December, and Däumling hasn't played against Caron yet, but I would consider Däumling the slight favorite in that player matchup. Schlimmshady's amazing record against the Peaches, Blaze and Kellner are what made ranking him the most difficult. He's up 2-1 against Blaze and 3-2 against Kellner, and even though those are still as close as it gets to having a winning record against someone, it's still an incredible feat. His set over Däumling also helps a ton, being 1-2 instead of 0-3 is a huge difference. He does have an 0-3 record against Nikki though, at least one win here would have been his ticket to an even higher placing in this tier. Nikki is 1-0, 3-0 and 4-0 against Kellner, Schlimmshady and Däumling respectively, but is 1-2 versus Blaze and got double eliminated by Caron at PPM number 1 early on in the season. Had he, or rather had I, not lost to Caron at that one tournament, I think it would have been fairly easy to rank me as the number 1 player in this tier, but since I lost, it makes things more complicated. Caron is down 1-2 and 0-2 against the Peaches. His 2 wins against me are mostly what keep him in contention for a good placing in this tier. The thing about Caron though is that he almost only went to tournaments inside of Berlin, only leaving his city for Awakening 3 and Pixel Pokal. The fact that he mostly went to Berlin tournaments and still has a losing record against Konadi, who he's 2-3 against, and Uzleon, who he's 0-2 against, drag him down just a little bit. If you're staying in your city, you need to show a little bit more dominance or destroy people once you leave your city. His wins against Timmy and Jagov are insane, don't get me wrong, but since he was the least active out of all these players and he doesn't have that one insanely good tournament run, I decided to put him in 8th place, since I feel like he fits quite nicely into that spot, because I want to reward the other players for being more active. I do think that Caron and the player who I ranked 7th are interchangeable on this list. He's at least as good as a few players who are above him, if not better. Both my heart and the results were telling me that the next 2 players should be Schlimmshady and Däumling in some order. This is where I started looking at best and worst tournament placings more closely. Both players' best tournament was probably Dash Dancer's Dawn in July, where Däumling beat Frozenlight, Maelram, Atlas and Schlimmshady to make 4th place at a very significant national. His 2nd place at the Vienna Comic Con isn't listed on here as he was the only top German player in attendance, but it should still be noted. After suffering a fairly early loss to Glory, he stormed his way through most Austrians by beating Kiwi, T, Timmy and Aries, while only placing below Over and Triff. Schlimmshady placed similarly well at Dash Dancer's Dawn, landing in 5th place by beating fatman.spam, Riggs, Razor Ramon and Over Triforce before falling to Avalancer and Däumling. His 2nd place finish at Melee Right Beyond number 4 is also notable, since he beat Blaze once, Kellner twice, and then lost both sets of grand finals to Kellner. All of these tournament runs are similarly good, so it doesn't help as much in terms of finding out who should be ranked higher. Their worst performances are very similar as well, so I had to go by both gut feeling and by comparing their wins and losses. I've only listed their very best wins and their very worst losses, so keep that in mind. Däumling's wins are, simply said, the Austrians, which is really impressive as Austria is the country of hidden bosses who would destroy many of the PR German players, but Austrian melee players aren't necessarily known for their proficiency in the ICES matchup. Däumling also has a win over Jade, which is good, and he beat Yapi. I can't really count his win over Yapi 100% though. That said happened in a situation where Yapi only needed to win one game to make it into top 32 over Däumling, and after Yapi won game 1, he started playing less seriously. Even then, this is still a very good win and should definitely still be noted. The only relevant players outside of Germany that Slim Shady has beaten are Over, which is amazing. He's also beaten Fuzziness as Falco, which is respectable, and he's beaten Pure Skills, which is alright. The losses are interesting as well, with Slim Shady having lost to Stevo and Wonder, while Däumling dropped sets to Desukakes and Sunplay. Sunplay is arguably better than Stevo and Wonder, though I can't really judge how good Desukakes is in comparison to those two German spacies. In the end, I asked myself who I think is more likely to win a German national, and while Däumling has a few very rough matchups, like against Nikki and the Peaches, I think that he is more likely to put together that one amazing run where he beats everyone like he did at Awakening 2. If Slim Shady had closed out at least one medium to large size tournament in his career, then he might just be over Däumling, but for now I'll give the higher spot to Däumling. The main reason I even started thinking about this was that Däumling usually had one of the highest seeds of the German smashers at tournaments, and I wanted to see if he had been able to achieve similar results with a lower seed, which I think he could definitely do. Now we'll have to decide on where to rank Blaze, Kellner and Nikki. I'm just going to say this right away and tell you that I ended up putting myself, Nikki, in first place of this tier. Before you go into the comments and call me an egoistical, self-centered, power-abusing backroom monkey, please hear me out. I thought about this for a long time, and only after Blaze told me that he agrees with me on this, I was confident enough to make this decision. All three of us have very similar best performances. Kellner won Melee Red Meow number 4 by beating Fatman, Däumling and Slim Shady twice, while also losing 2 sets to Slim. Blaze's best run was PPM Melee number 2, which he won by beating Karon, Däumling and Nikki twice, while Nikki beat Luma, Fatman, Frozenlight, Kellner and Slim Shady twice to win Hanover Underground Monthly number 10, after dropping a set to Kukin in winner's quarters. The deciding factor was Nikki's 13th place at Air 4, which is the best performance of any player in this tier by a good amount. After he lost at round 1 pools to Hen, a peach from the UK who is ranked 14th in the UK and who is shooting up the ranks like crazy at the moment, Nikki went undefeated against Jam, Yapi, Sunplay, Däumling and Poopmeister to make it into top 32 as a first seed. There, he 3-0'd Liax, took a game of STJ in winners round 2, beat Deathgazer who had won against Fuzziness in the round before falling to Vanity Angel 3-1. At the same time, Nikki's worst tournament was probably Syndicate 2017, where he suffered losses to Pure Evil in pools, Mahi and Istar for 17th place, but still beat Alpha Dash and Däumling, which led to him placing higher than Däumling and sharing 17th place with Kellner. To summarize, Nikki's best performance is probably the best, and my worst performance is also on the better side. That combined with the fact that I'm undefeated against Däumling and Slim Shady made me put myself above Kellner and Blaze. I do not think that I'm a better player than anyone in this tier. I think we're all equally good and any of us can beat the other on any given day, but when I thought about it for this long, I decided that I feel like the results favor me very slightly. All we have left in this tier is Kellner vs Blaze. This literally felt like all you could do to make a decision is flip a coin. Blaze's worst performances were at Dash Dancer's Dawn, where he got 17th, losing to Razor Ramon and Kukin, and at Air, where he got 49th, losing to Prof, Sverre and Shifting Shadows, which are both not great, but not awful either. Kellner went out fairly early at Big PPM, where he lost to Karon and Keza for 9th place. This isn't a performance you have to be ashamed of either. I think the fact that Kellner is up 1-0 in the head-to-head and outplays Blaze at one more large tournament than Blaze outplaced him made me decide on giving Kellner the higher spot. I'm sorry Blaze, but you know that this decision is just straight up impossible to make and I feel like the stats favor Kellner ever so slightly. Number 2 on this ranking is Reaper, number 1 is Ice. Who would have thought? I think these are obvious as hell. The only player who I see challenging Reaper soon is Dart, who has already beaten him twice at Pixel Pokal. But for now, both Reaper and especially Ice are in their own tier, and they're a good bit above everyone else right now. I want to give thanks to all the players who helped me create this list, all the people who shared their opinions with me to make my claims more valid. And again, shoutouts to Geeky Goon Squad for letting me use all the content from the YouTube channel. If you guys didn't know, Geeky Goon Squad just lost their main sponsor, so it would be really great if you could subscribe to the Twitch channel and YouTube channel right now. Because if you value Sick European Melee, then Geeky Goon Squad is the one channel that provides this to you. So please make sure to support the channel so that we can continue watching amazing tournaments all over our continent. Thank you!